Worship him. Worship the Holy Son. Worship him. Why hello, why hello. Today, I wanna go back and read some creepypastas. Now, to me, this is something really important, as creepypasta was the first fandom, or in general, first media I had a hyperfixation on as a kid. I was 9 to 10 when I got into creepypastas, and I remember watching a lot of content, be it animation readings, be it just readings in general, or be it people drawing the creepypasta characters while they're reading the stories. I used to love those kind of videos. Watch them all the time back in the day. Nowadays I don't watch them as much, as my hyperfixation on creepypasta has dropped quite significantly. And in general, I also watched some animation memes back in the day regarding creepypasta. In general, creepypasta is not as popular as it used to be, not in the slightest. Back then, it was everywhere. And I can tell you one thing. The fandom was immensely, let's say, strange, with the amount of fan art ships and such that was there. They made the creepypastas not look scary, they made them look sexy or hot. I'll never understand that back in the day. Like, making them cute, okay. Just like chibis, alright, I'm fine with that. But not sexy, bruh. No. Like, if it's the adult ones, or like, I don't know, like Slenderman or something, okay. But a lot of the times it was just the ones that were underaged. Yeah, that was a problem back in the day, good lord. And my young self didn't really know better, until I grew up older and then saw messed up the fandom actually used to be. And from my memory, the fandom kind of fell apart once the case of the Slender stabbings happened, which I'm not gonna get into that. If you want to know more about that, you can search it up on YouTube. There are several good videos regarding the Slenderman stabbings. And since we are reading creepypastas today, I decided to do one thing. And that is that I will rank each of the creepypastas that I read. Now, I'll have to find a tier list so we can rank it, and then read the creepypastas on the tier list. Now, some of them might take longer. I know for a fact that I'm not gonna go search up for Ben Drowned, because I'm not reading Ben Drowned. That can be a whole other video. Ben Drowned is like it's a lot. It's an ARG, it's a creepypasta. There's a lot going on with Ben Drowned. And I'm not reading Happy Happy. I love Happy Happy, but it's like 2 hours long. How do I know that? I recorded myself reading Happy Happy and its sequel, were about 2 hours long. And so I'm not doing that. I'm not reading Happy Happy. I'm also not reading 1999 because that's also around an hour. And, as you can see here, I have my Sonic.exe plushie from back in the day. Okay, it's not that old. I got it more recently. Not even recently, I had this thing for a while. But like, not when I was a kid. I did not get this when I was a kid. So this guy is going to be with us for the next section. And since I don't know how to rate stuff, I decided to get Amy to rate it, because she's done it at least a billion times. But me and Amy regarding creepypastas, we actually have the same opinions, since we share a body. Not sure exactly how it's gonna go, but we'll cut to Amy. Thank you dearly, Vigsaw. So, Vigsaw picked random creepypastas from the Creepypasta wiki, and I'll be reading them, as Vigsaw wanted to read them, but then she got kind of distracted because Frederick's not doing very well, so I have to do it now. So, Vigsaw created this tier list, and we have 5 tiers. We have best of the best, which are the highest ranking creepypastas, the creme de la creme. Then we have well written, good creepypastas, but not to like a astonishing degree. Then we have meh, which are creepypastas that are in the middle. Then we have not that good, which are creepypastas that are below meh, like they're bad but not too bad. And then there's trash, utter trash, which is just horrible on every front. So let's see what we're working with. I'm a little nervous about this since I've never done this before. Not the ranking part, but more so just having a billion tabs opened on my computer and having to read creepypasta stories. So, first up we have Candle Cove, right? I have each of the stories up on my computer. Every single one has a different tab. And I will close the tab once the creepypasta story has been read, so I will have a better view of things. But let's start with Candle Cove. Net Nostalgia Forum, Television Local. Sky Shale 033. Subject, Candle Cove Local Kids Show. Does anyone remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been 6 or 7. I never found reference to it anywhere, so I think it was on a local station around 1971 or 1972. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station, but I do remember it was on at a weird time, like 4 p.m. Mike_Painter65. It seems really familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland and was 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove. Was it about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of a cave talking to a little girl. Skyshell 033. Yes! Okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls. Real low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll. Looked like an antique that didn't belong on the body. I don't remember what station this was. I don't think it was WTSF though. Jaren_2005. Sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what show you mean, Skyshell. I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple months in 71, not 72. I was 12 and I watched it a few times with my brother. It was channel 58, whatever station that was. My mom would let me switch to it after the news. Let me see what I remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagined herself to be friends with pirates. The pirate ship was called the Laughingstock, and Pirate Percy wasn't a very good pirate because he got scared too easily. And there was Calliope music constantly playing. Don't remember the girl's name. Janice or Jade or something. Think it was Janice. Skyshell 033. Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughingstock in Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face with the lower jaw submerged. It looked like it was swallowing the sea, and it had that awful Ed Wine voice and laugh. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden plastic model to the foam puppet version of the head that talked. Mike underscore Painter 65. Haha, I remember now too. Do you remember this part, Skyshell? You have to go inside. Skyshell 033. Ugh, Mike, I got a chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in, like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was. And the camera would push in on Laughingstock's face with each pause. You have to go inside. With his two eyes, Askew, and that floppy foam jaw, and the fishing line that opened and closed it. Ugh. It just looked so cheap and awful. You guys remember the villain? He had a face that was just a handlebar mustache above really tall, narrow teeth. Kevin underscore Hart. I honestly thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when the show was on Nightmare Fuel. Darren underscore 2005. That wasn't the villain. The puppet with the mustache. That was the villain's sidekick, Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on top of the mustache. I used to think that meant he had only one eye. But yeah, the villain was another marionette, the Skin Taker. I can't believe what they let us watch back then. Kevin underscore Hart. Jesus H. Christ, the Skin Taker. What kind of kids show were we watching? I seriously could not look at the screen when the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings. Just a dirty skeleton wearing that brown top hat and cape, and his glass eyes that were too big for his skull. Christ almighty. Skyshell 033. Wasn't his top hat and cloak all sewn up crazily? Was that supposed to be children's skin? Mike underscore Painter 65. Yeah, I think so. Remember, his mouth didn't open and close. His jaw just slid back and forth. I remember the little girl said, "Why does your mouth move like that?" The Skin Taker didn't look at the girl but at the camera and said, "To grind your skin." Skyshell 033. I'm so relieved that other people remember this terrible show. Used to have this awful memory, a bad dream I had with the opening jingle ended, the show faded in from black, and all the characters were there, but the camera was just cutting to each of their faces, and they were just screaming, and the puppets and marionettes were flailing spastically, good lord, and just all screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying like she had been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it. Kevin underscore Hart. I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode. Skyshell 033. No. Not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing in place, crying and screaming for the whole show. Kevin underscore Hart. Maybe I'm manufacturing the memory because you said that, but I swear to God, I just remember seeing what you described. They just screamed. Jaren underscore 2005. Oh God, yes, the little girl Janice. I remember seeing her shake. And the Skin Taker screaming through his gnashing teeth. His jaw careening, my God, so wildly I thought it would come off its wire hinges. I turned it off and it was the last time I watched. I ran to tell my brother and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on. Mike Painter 65. I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little, in the early 70s when I was 8 or 9, and if she remembered a kid show called Candle Cove. She said that she was surprised I could remember that, and I asked why, and she said, because I used to think it was so strange that you said, "I'm gonna go watch Candle Cove now, Mom," and you would tune the TV to static and just watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your little pirate show. Alright, so that was Candle Cove. This is a classic. Candle Cove is a classic. And outside of Creepypasta, it has its own fandom. I know that. And in general, this story is interesting, as it's not told by a singular person, but more so a collection of people who remember certain things about a show they used to watch. Now, realizing at the end that the show wasn't real and it was actually just TV static is crazy. It is. But now, how good was the story? In my opinion, it was really good. I love Candle Cove a lot. I love it a lot. It's, like stated, a classic. And I hope it stays that way. So, Candle Cove is our first best of the best. It is gonna be the standard. For now. Gonna be the standard. I know that there are some grammatical errors, but that's kind of normal with creepypastas. That's the defining trait. Right. Next up, we have Dead Bart by K.I. Simpson. I think Canonical was stated it was from Chris Straub, but I'm not sure if he was the one writing it, because I remember he made the Channel Zero version of Canonical. But now to Dead Bart. You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes? They refuse to count a couple of them, making the amount of episodes inconsistent. The reason for this is a lost episode from season 1. Finding details about this missing episode is difficult. No one who was working on the show at the time likes to talk about it. From what has been pieced together, the lost episode was written entirely by Matt Groening. During production of the first season, Matt started to act strangely. He was very quiet, seemed nervous and morbid. Mentioning this to anyone who was present results in them getting very angry and forbidding you to ever mention it to Matt. The episode's production number was 7G44. The title was Dead Bart. In addition to getting angry, asking anyone who was on the show about this will cause them to do everything they can to stop you from directly communicating with Matt Groening. At a fan event, I managed to follow him after he spoke to the crowd and eventually had a chance to talk to him alone as he was leaving the building. He didn't seem upset that I had followed him, probably expected a typical encounter with an obsessive fan. When I mentioned the lost episode though, all color drained from his face and he started trembling. When I asked him if he could tell me any details, he sounded like he was on the verge of tears. He grabbed a piece of paper, wrote something on it, and handed it to me. He begged me never to mention this episode again. The piece of paper had a website address on it. I would rather not say what it was, for reasons you'll see in a second. I entered the address into my browser, and I came to a site that was completely black, except for a line of yellow text, a download link. I clicked on it, and a file started downloading. Once the file was downloaded, my computer went crazy. It was the worst virus I had ever seen. System restored didn't work, the entire computer had to be rebooted. Before doing this though, I copied the file onto a CD. I tried to open it on my now empty computer, and as I suspected, there was an episode of The Simpsons on it. The episode started off like any other episode, but had very poor quality animation. If you've seen the original animation for Some Enchanted Evening, it was similar but less stable. The first act was fairly normal, but the way the characters acted was a little off. Homer seemed angrier, Marge seemed depressed, Lisa seemed anxious, Bart seemed to have genuine anger and hatred for his parents. The episode was about the Simpsons going on a plane trip near the end of the first act. The plane was taking off. Bart was fooling around as you'd expect. However, as the plane was about 50 feet off the ground, Bart broke a window on the plane and was sucked out. At the beginning of the series, Matt had an idea that the animated style of The Simpsons world represented life and that death turned things more realistic. This was used in this episode. The picture of Bart's corpse was barely recognizable. They took full advantage of it not having to move and made an almost photorealistic drawing of his dead body. Act 1 ended with a shot of Bart's corpse. When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge, and Lisa were sitting at their table crying. Crying went on and on. It got more pained. It sounded more realistic. Better acting than you would think possible. The animation started to decay even more as they cried, and you could hear murmuring in the background. This crying went on for all of Act 2. Act 3 opened with a title card saying 1 year has passed. Homer, Marge, and Lisa were skeletally thin and still sitting at the table. There was no sign of Maggie or the pets. They decided to visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted, and as they walked to the cemetery, the houses became more and more decrepit. They all looked abandoned. When they got to the grave, Bart's body was just laying in front of his tombstone. God, looking just like it did at the end of Act 1. The family started crying again. Eventually, they stopped and just stared at Bart's body. The camera zoomed in on Homer's face. According to summaries, Homer tells a joke at this part, but it isn't audible in the version I saw. You can't tell what Homer's saying. The view zoomed out as the episode came to a close. The tombstones in the background had the names of every Simpsons guest star on them. Some that no one had heard of in 1989. Some that haven't been on the show yet. All of them had death dates on them. For guests who died since, like Michael Jackson and George Harrison, the dates were when they would die. You could try to use the tombstones to predict the death of living Simpsons guest stars, but there's something odd about most of the ones who haven't died yet. All of their deaths are listed as the same date. I apologize if my reading skills are horrible. I haven't read Creepypastas in a while, but let's see. Is that Bart as bad as some people said it was? Reading it now, it wasn't like utter trash. Like, I've read worse than this. I've read worse crap than this. Way worse. For me personally, that Bart isn't good. Like, one, why are you following someone around? Like, I know obsessive fans exist. All often said that. But if your computer, after downloading some sketchy shit that the creator of The Simpsons wrote on a paper, gave it to you, and your computer is going crazy, why would you continue? Why? If my computer got a virus, I'd cry. I would not do that shit again. No. Hell no. I know there's a sequel to this. I remember that. But I'm not gonna read the sequel. As it's not in the list. So yeah. Where would I put that part? I'm just gonna put it in not that good. It's really not that good. It's not utter trash, but it is close to utter trash. Okay, this is one I've actually never read before. Gateway of the Mind. In 1983, a team of deeply pious scientists conducted a radical experiment in an undisclosed facility. The scientists had theorized that a human without access to any senses or ways to perceive stimuli would be able to perceive the presence of God. They believed that the five senses clouded our awareness of eternity, and without them, a human could actually establish contact with God by thought. An elderly man who claimed to have nothing left to live for was the only test subject to volunteer. To purge him of all his senses, The scientists performed a complex operation in which every sensory nerve connection to the brain was surgically severed. I think it's severed. Although the test subject retained full muscular function, he could not see, hear, taste, smell, or feel. With no possible way to communicate with or even sense the outside world, he was alone with his thoughts. Scientists monitored him as he spoke aloud about his state of mind in jumbled, slurred sentences that he couldn't even hear. After 4 days, the man claimed to be hearing hushed, unintelligible voices in his head. Assuming it was an onset of psychosis, the scientists paid little attention to the man's concerns. 2 days later, the man cried that he could hear his dead wife speaking with him, and even more, he could communicate back. The scientists were intrigued, but were not convinced until the subject started naming dead relatives of the scientists. He repeated personal information to the scientists that only their dead spouses and parents would have known. At this point, a sizable portion of scientists left the study. After a week of conversing with the deceased through his thoughts, the subject became distressed, saying the voices were overwhelming. In every waking moment, his consciousness was bombarded by hundreds of voices that refused to leave him alone. He frequently threw himself against the wall, trying to elicit a pain response. He begged the scientists for sedatives so he could escape the voices by sleeping. This tactic worked for 3 days until he started having severe night terrors. The subject repeatedly said he could see and hear the deceased in his dreams. Only a day later, the subject began to scream and claw at his non-functional eyes, hoping to sense something in the physical world. The hysterical subject now said the voices of the dead were deafening and hostile, speaking of hell and the end of the world. At one point, he yelled, "No heaven, no forgiveness," for 5 hours straight. He continually begged to be killed, but the scientists were convinced that he was close to establishing contact with God. After another day, the subject could no longer form coherent sentences. Seemingly mad, he started to bite off chunks of his flesh from his arm. The scientists rushed into the test chamber and restrained him to a table so he could not kill himself. After a few hours of being tied down, the subject halted his struggling and screaming. He stared blankly at the ceiling as his teardrops silently streaked across his face. For 2 weeks, the subject had to be manually rehydrated due to constant crying. Eventually, he turned his head and, despite his blindness, made focused eye contact with a scientist for the first time in the study. He whispered, "I have spoken with God, and he has abandoned us." And his vital signs stopped. There was no apparent cause of death. Right? That was the gateway of the mind. This story reminds me of the Russian sleep experiment. I remember being horrified of the Russian sleep experiment, mostly because of the imagery. This story reminded me a lot of that, just instead of it being multiple people, it's one person, one singular person. So, where will you put this? I would say it's well written. Not the best of the best, but it's well written. Really nice story. Alright, next up is one that I remember a lot, actually, from when I was a kid, and that is Laughing Jack. It was a nice summer day. My 5-year-old son James was playing outside in the backyard of our suburban home. James has always been a quiet boy. He plays by himself mostly. He never had many friends, but he has always had a wild imagination. I was in the kitchen feeding our dog Fido when I heard what sounded like James talking to someone in the backyard. I'm not sure who it was. He could be talking to... Could he have finally made a friend? Being a single mom, it's hard for me to always keep an eye on my son, so I decided to go outside and check on him. When I went into the backyard, I was a bit confused, because James was the only person back there. Was he talking to himself? I could have sworn I heard another voice. "James, it's time to come inside," I called out to him. He came inside and sat down at the kitchen table. It was about lunchtime, so I decided to make him a turkey sandwich. "James, who are you talking to out there?" I asked. James looked up for a moment. "I was playing with my new friend," he said, smiling. I poured him some milk and continued to pry, as any good mother would. "Does your friend have a name? Why didn't you ask him to have lunch with us?" I asked. James stared at me for a moment before replying, "His name is Laughing Jack." I was a bit taken back by what he said. "Oh, that's a strange name. What does your friend look like?" I was a bit confused. "He's a clown. He has long hair and big swirly cone nose. He's got long arms and baggy pants with stripy socks, and he always smiles." I realized my son was talking about an imaginary friend. I suppose it is normal for kids his age to have imaginary friends, especially when he has no real friends to play with. It's probably just a phase. Rest of the day went by as per usual, and it was starting to get late, so I put James to bed. I tucked him in, gave him a kiss, and made sure to turn on his nightlight before I'd close the door. I was pretty tired myself, so I decided to go to bed not long after. I had an awful nightmare. It was dark. I was in some kind of run-down amusement park. I was scared, running through an endless field of empty tents, broken down rides, and abandoned game huts. The whole place had a horrible look to it. Everything was black and white. The prized stuffed animals all hung from nooses in the game huts, all with sick grins stitched on their faces. It felt like the whole park was looking at me, even though there wasn't another living thing in sight. Then suddenly I began to hear music play. Sounds of Pop Goes the Weasel being played on a squeeze box echoed through the park. It was hypnotizing. I followed its tune to the circus tent, almost in a trance, unable to stop my legs from moving forward. It was pitch black. The only light came from a single spotlight shining on the center of the big top. As I walked toward the light, the music slowed down. I found myself singing along, unable to stop. All around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased the weasel. The monkey, though it was all in fun. The music stopped right before its climax, and suddenly the lights shot on. The intensity of the lights was practically blinding. All I could see was a small dark silhouette shuffle towards me. Then another one appeared, and another, and another. There were dozens of them, all coming toward me. I couldn't move. My legs were frozen. All I could do was watch as the haunting figures drew near. As they got closer, I could see. They were children. As I looked at each one, I noticed they were all horribly sick and mutilated. Some had cuts all over their body, others were severely burned, and others were missing limbs, even eyes. The children enveloped me, clawing at my flesh, dragging me to the ground, and tearing inside me. As the children tore me apart and I faded away, all I could hear was laughter. Horrible, awful, evil laughter. Woke up the next morning in a cold sweat. After taking a few deep breaths, I looked over and saw that a few of James' action figures were positioned facing me on top of my nightstand. I sighed. James had probably woken up early and put these here. Gathered up the toys and made my way to James' room. However, when I opened the door, James was sound asleep. I just shrugged and placed the toys back into his toy box and headed out to the living room. A little while later, James woke up and I made him his breakfast. He was quiet and seemed a bit groggy. Perhaps he didn't sleep well either. I had to ask him about the toys. "James, honey, did you put the toys in Mommy's room this morning?" His eyes shot up at me for a moment, then quickly glanced back at the cereal. "Laughing Jack did it." Rolled my eyes and responded, "Well, you tell Laughing Jack to keep the toys in your room." James nodded and finished up his breakfast and decided to go out play in the backyard. I went to relax in the living room, and I must have dozed off because I woke up a couple hours later. Shit, I need to check on James. I was a bit worried that it had been over 2 hours and I haven't checked on him. I stepped out into the backyard, but James wasn't there anymore. I was getting nervous, so I called out to him. "James! James, where are you?" Just then I heard a giggle come from the front yard. I rushed through the gate, around to the front of the house. James was sitting on the sidewalk. I breathed a sigh of relief and walked over to him. James, how many times have I told you to stay in the backyard? James, what are you eating? James looked up at me, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a hand of card candies in all colors. This made me very nervous. James, who gave you that candy? James just stared at me, not speaking. James, please tell Mommy where you got that candy. James hung his head down and said, Laughing Jack gave it to me. My heart sunk. I kneeled down to look him in the eye. James, I have had enough of this damn Laughing Jack thing. He's not real. Now this is a very serious situation. I need to know who gave you the candy. I could see my son's eyes tear up. Mama, Laughing Jack did give me the candy. Closed my eyes and took a deep breath. James has never lied to me, but what he's telling me is impossible. Make him spit out the candy and throw the rest away. James really appears to be fine. Maybe I'm just overreacting. After all, he could have gotten it from Tom and Linda from next door or Mr. Walker down the street. Either way, I'm going to have to keep a closer eye on James. That night, I put James to bed as usual and decided to go to bed early myself. Suddenly, I was woken up by a loud bang coming from the kitchen. Sprung out of bed and hurried down the stairs. When I got to the kitchen, I was horrified. Everything on the counters had been thrown on the floor, and our dog Fido hung dead from the light fixture. His stomach was cut open and stuffed with candy, the same type that James was eating earlier that day. Shock was quickly broken by a sharp scream coming from James' room, followed by loud crashes. Quickly grabbed a knife from the drawer and moved up the stairs at the speed that only a mother whose child is in danger could have. I burst through the door and flicked on the lights. Everything in the room was knocked over and tossed on the floor. My poor son in his bed crying and shaking with fear. Pool of urine stained the sheets. Scooped my child up and ran out of the house and went next door to Tom and Linda's house. Luckily, they were still awake. They let me use their phone and I called the police. It didn't take them long to arrive and I explained what had happened. They looked at me like I was oh my God. And I explained what happened. They looked at me as if I were crazy. They searched the house, but all they found was a dead dog and 2 trashed rooms. The officer told me that someone had probably gotten into the house and done this right before making a quick escape when they heard me coming up the stairs. I knew it wasn't true. All the doors were locked and none of the windows were open. Whatever was in my house didn't come from outside. Next day, James stayed inside. I didn't want him to leave my sight. I went into the garage and found his old baby monitor and set it up in his room. If anything comes into it tonight, I was going to be able to hear it. I went to the kitchen and grabbed the largest knife from the drawer and put it on my nightstand. Imaginary friend or not, I'm not letting anything hurt my little boy. Soon enough, night came, but I put James to bed. He was afraid, but I promised him that I wasn't going to let anything happen to him. I tucked him in, gave him a kiss, and turned on the nightlight. Before closing the door, I whispered to him, "Good night, James. I love you." I tried to stay up as long as I could, but after a few hours I felt myself drifting off. My baby would be safe for the night, and I needed to sleep. As I laid my head on the pillow, I heard a soft noise come from the baby monitor I had put on my nightstand. This it sounded like interference, like the kind of radio would make. Then it turned into a soft moan. Was James Lee asleep? Then I heard it, the laugh from my nightmare, the horrible laugh. Sprung up from the bed and grabbed the knife from under my pillow. I rushed over to James' room and creaked the door open. I tried the light switch, but it wouldn't come on. I took a step in and I could feel the warm, thick liquid on my feet. Suddenly, James' light came on and I could see the absolute horror laid out in front of me. James' body was nailed up on the wall, the nails piercing through his hands and feet. His chest was cut wide open and his organs hung down to the floor. His eyes and tongue had been removed along with most of his teeth. I was disgusted. I could hardly believe this was my baby boy. Then I heard it again, soft desperate moan. James was still alive. My baby, my poor baby, in so much pain, barely clinging to life. I ran across the room and vomited on the floor, but my sickness was interrupted by a horrible cackle coming from behind me. I spun around while still wiping bile from my mouth. Then out of the shadows emerged the fiend responsible for all of this, Laughing Jack. His ghost white skin and matted black hair hung down to his shoulders. He had piercing white eyes, surrounded by dark black circles. His twisted smile revealed a row of sharp, jagged teeth, and his skin didn't look like skin at all. It almost looked like rubber or plastic. He wore a patchy black and white clown outfit with striped sleeves and socks. His body itself was grotesque, his long arms hanging down past his waist, and the way he was poised made him look almost boneless, like a rag doll. He let out a sickening laugh as if to let me know he was pleased with my reaction to his work. He then turned around slowly in front of James and began to laugh even more at the horrific sight he was laid out. That was enough to shake me from my terror, and I snapped, "Get away from him, you bastard!" Rushed at the monster, raising the knife above my head, and stabbed down at him. But as soon as the knife touched him, he disappeared in a cloud of black smoke. Knife passed right through, and pierced James, still beating hard, splashing the warm blood on my face. No, what have I done? My baby! I killed my baby! Immediately fell to my knees, and I could sirens in the distance roaring louder. My boy, my sweet baby boy. I promised Mommy would protect you, but I failed. I'm sorry, James, I'm sorry. Police soon arrived to find me in front of my son, still wielding the knife covered in my baby's blood. Trial was short insanity. I was placed in the federal police house for the criminally insane. I have been for the past 2 months. It's not so bad here. The only reason I'm awake now is because someone is playing Pop Goes the Weasel outside my window. I'll talk to the orderlies about it in the morning. Okay, so that's not the Laughing Jack that I remember at all. This is a different version of Laughing Jack. Because I remember the one where Laughing Jack gets brought down. I think he gets created by an angel and he gets brought down. And he gets brought to this kid called Isaac, or what his name was. And he's a goofy loony clown and all that. He's like rainbow colored. And then Isaac abandons him. I think his name was Isaac. I don't remember. Abandons him for years. His color drains and he kind of just exists. This, I don't remember this at all. Don't remember this at all. So basically the story is just that Laughing Jack is this imaginary friend of the protagonist's son. And he ends up terrorizing the son, eventually getting the son killed. And now the mom, the dad, I don't know if it's a woman or a man, is kind of just stuck in a mental asylum or some bullshit like that. I don't like this version of Laughing Jack. I don't like this version. It's strange. Really strange. I don't like it. I don't like it. Where would I... Is it as worse as that part? Do I hate it more than that part? Do I like it more than that part? Nah, I'm gonna put it alongside that part. I don't... It's not good. This version of Laughing Jack is not good. If it was the other one, I would have put it in meh, at least. Alright. Lavender Town Syndrome. My sister and my cousin watched a video about this creepypasta. And it was just everywhere back in the day. So let's get to reading. Lavender Town Syndrome, also known as Lavender Town Tone or Lavender Town Suicides, was a peak in suicides and illness of children between the ages of 7 to 12. Shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan back in February 27, 1996. Rumors say that these suicides and illness only occurred after the children playing the game reached Lavender Town, whose theme music had extremely high frequencies that studies showed that only children and young teens can hear since their ears are more sensitive. Due to the lavender tone, at least 200 children supposedly committed suicide, and many more developed illnesses and afflictions. The children who committed suicide usually did so by hanging or jumping from heights. Those who did not act irrationally and complained of severe headaches after listening to Lavender Town's theme. Although Lavender Town now sounds differently depending on the game, this mass hysteria was caused by the first Pokemon game released. After the Lavender Tone incident, the programmers had fixed Lavender Town's theme music to be at a lower frequency, and since the children were no longer affected by it. And since then, the children were no longer affected by it. One video appeared in 2010 using special software to analyze the audio of Lavender Town's music. When played, the software created images of the unknown near the end of the audio. This raised a controversy since the unknown didn't appear until Generation 2 games Silver, Gold, and Crystal. The unknown translates to Leave Now. There's also the set beta version of Lavender Town. It is said that the beta version of Pocket Monsters was released to some kids to test the games. This is the video of the beta version of Lavender Town. And then it just shows the Lavender Town video by Badass VGM, which I'm not gonna play in case there's kids watching this. It's knowing nowadays how much kids love horror, wouldn't be surprised. Now, Lavender Town Syndrome is a simple one. It doesn't do like extremes like a lot of gore or something. It just talks about suicides in Japan, which is crazy, but it's not like a bunch of gore. It's not like unrealistic. It's still stuck in realism, which I like. But would I say it's one of the best? No. But I'm gonna put it in well written. It is still it's believable. Lavender Town is really believable. Lavender Town and Candle Cove are two of the more believable ones. But honestly, I think Candle Cove is more likely since no one really died in Candle Cove. Next stop, oh my god, Mr. Whitemouth. I remember this was my childhood. I loved and listened to Mr. Whitemouth, and I honestly hope that the story is just as good as I remember, because I haven't read it in years. Let's get going. During my childhood, my family was like a drop of water in a vast river, never remaining in one location for long. We settled in Rhode Island when I was 8, and there we remained until I went to college in Colorado Springs. Most of my memories are rooted in Rhode Island, but there are fragments in the attic of my brain which belong to the various homes we had lived in when I was much younger. Most of these memories are unclear and pointless, chasing after another boy in the backyard of a house in North Carolina, trying to build a raft to float on the creek behind the apartment we rented in Pennsylvania, and so on. But there's one set of memories which remains as clear as glass, as though they were just made yesterday. I often wonder whether these memories are simply lucid dreams produced by the long sickness I experienced that spring, but in my heart I know they are real. We were living in a house just outside the bustling metropolis of New Vineyard, Maine, population 643. It was a large structure, especially for a family of 3. There were a number of rooms that I didn't see in the 5 months we resided there. In some ways, it was a waste of space, but it was the only house on the market at the time, at least within an hour's commute to my father's place of work. The day after my 5th birthday, attended by my parents alone, I came down with a fever. The doctor said I had mononucleosis, which meant no rough play and more fever for at least another 3 weeks. It was horrible timing to be bedridden. We were in the process of packing our things to move to Pennsylvania, and most of my things were already packed away in boxes, leaving my room barren. Mother brought me ginger ale and books several times a day, and these served the function of being my primary form of entertainment for the next 2 weeks. Boredom always looped just around the corner, waiting to rear its ugly head and compound my misery. I don't exactly recall how I met Mr. Whitemouth. I think it was about a week after I was diagnosed with mono. My first memory of the small creature was asking him if he had a name. He told me to call him Mr. Whitemouth, because his mouth was large. In fact, everything about him was large in comparison to his body. His head, his eyes, his crooked ears, but his mouth was by far the largest. You look kind of like a Furby, I said as he flipped through one of my books. Mr. Whitemouth stopped and gave me a puzzled look. A Furby? What's a Furby? He asked. I shrugged. You know, the toy. The little robot with the big ears. You can pet and feed them, almost like a real pet. Oh, Mr. Whitemouth resumed his activity. You don't need one of those. They aren't the same as having a real friend. I remember Mr. Whitemouth disappearing every time my mother stopped by to check in on me. I lay under your bed. He later explained, I don't want your parents to see me because I'm afraid they won't let us play anymore. We didn't do much during those first few days. Mr. Whitemouth just looked at my books, fascinated by the stories and pictures they contained. The third or fourth morning after I met him, he greeted me with a large smile on his face. I have a new game we can play, he said. We have to wait until after your mother comes to check on you, because she can't see us play it. It's a secret game. After my mother delivered more books and soda at the usual time, Mr. Whitemouth slipped out from under the bed and tucked my hand. We have to go to the top of a room at the end of this hallway, he said. I objected at first, as my parents had forbidden me to leave my bed without their permission, but Mr. Whitemouth persisted until I gave in. The room in question had no furniture or wallpaper. Its only distinguishing feature was a window opposite the doorway. Mr. Whitemouth darted across the room and gave the window a firm push, flinging it open. He then beckoned me to look out at the ground below. We were on the second story of the house, but it was on a hill, and from this angle the drop was farther than 2 stories due to the incline. I like to play pretend up here, Mr. Whitemouth explained. I pretend that there is a big soft trampoline below this window, and I jump. If you pretend hard enough, you bounce back like a feather. I want you to try. I was a 5-year-old with a fever, so only a hint of skepticism started through my thoughts as I looked down and considered the possibility. It's a long drop, I said. But that's all a part of the fun. It wouldn't be fun if it was only a short drop. If it were that way, you may as well just bounce on a real trampoline. I toyed with the idea, picturing myself falling through thin air only to bounce back to the window, something unseen by human eyes. But the realism in me prevailed. Maybe some other time, I said. I don't know if I have enough imagination. I could get hurt. Mr. Whitemouth's face contorted into a snarl, but only for a moment. Anger gave way to his disappointment. If you say so, he said. He spent the rest of the day under my bed, quiet as a mouse. The following morning, Mr. Whitemouth arrived holding a small box. I want to teach you how to juggle, he said. Here are some things you can use to practice before I start giving you lessons. I looked in the box, and it was full of knives. My parents will kill me, I shouted, horrified that Mr. Whitemouth had brought knives into my room. Objects that my parents would never allow me to touch. I'll be spanked and grounded for a year. Mr. Whitemouth frowned. It's fun to juggle with these. I want you to try it. I put the box away. I can't. I'll get in trouble. Knives aren't safe to just throw in the air. Mr. Whitemouth's frown deepened into a scowl. He took the box of knives and slid under my bed, remaining there the rest of the day. I began to wonder how often he was under me. I started having trouble sleeping after that. Mr. Whitemouth often woke me up at night, saying you put a real trampoline under the window. A big one. One that I couldn't see in the dark. I always declined and tried to go back to sleep, but Mr. Whitemouth persisted. Sometimes he stayed by my side until early in the morning, encouraging me to jump. He wasn't so fun to play with anymore. My mother came to me one morning and told me I had her permission to walk around outside.
She thought the fresh air would be good for me, especially after being confined to my room for so long. Ecstatic, I put on my sneakers and trotted out to the back porch, yearning for the feeling of sun on my face. Mr. Widemouth was waiting for me. "I have something I want you to see," he said. I must have given him a weird look because he then said, "That's safe, I promise." Followed him to the beginning of a deer trail which ran through the woods behind the house. "This is an important path," he explained. "I've had a lot of friends about your age. When they were ready, I took them down this path to a special place. You aren't ready yet, but one day I hope to take you there." I returned to the house, wondering what kind of place lay beyond the trail. Beyond that trail. 2 weeks after I met Mr. Whitemouth, the last load of our things had been packed into a moving truck. I would be in the cab with the truck sitting next to my father for the long drive to Pennsylvania. Considered my telling my Mr. Whitemouth that I was leaving, but even at 5 years old, I was beginning to suspect that perhaps the creature's intentions were not to my benefit, despite what he said otherwise. For this reason, I decided to keep my departure a secret. Father and I were in the trunk at 4 a.m. He was hoping to make it to Pennsylvania by lunchtime tomorrow with the help of an endless supply of coffee and a six-pack of energy drinks. He seemed more like a man who was about to run a marathon rather than one who was about to spend 2 days sitting still. Early enough for you?" he asked. I nodded and placed my head against the window, hoping for some sleep before the sun came up. I felt my father's hand on my shoulder. "This is the last move, son. I promise. I know it's hard for you, as sick as you've been. Once Daddy gets promoted, we can settle down and you can make friends." I opened my eyes as we backed out of the driveway. I saw Mr. Widemouth's silhouette in my bedroom window. He stood motionless until the truck was about to turn onto the main road. He gave a pitiful little wave goodbye, steak knife in hand. I didn't wave back. Years later, I returned to New Vineyard. The piece of land our house stood upon was empty except for the foundation, as the house burned down a few years after my family left. Out of curiosity, I followed the deer trail that Mr. Whitemouth had shown me. Part of me expected him to jump out from behind a tree and scare the living bejesus out of me, but I felt that Mr. Whitemouth was gone, somehow tied to the house that no longer existed. The trail ended at the New Vineyard Memorial Cemetery. I noticed that many of the tombstones belonged to children. It is as good as I remember. Let's go. Oh, Mr. Whitemouth. The story of a kid that meets a weird Furby-like entity that tried to kill her the entire time. Oh, man. I find it interesting that Mr. Whitemouth kind of just dies. Like, he's one of the few creepypasta entities that dies in the original story. As most creepypasta entities don't actually die, it's mostly just the main character dies, but not really the entity itself. So the entity itself is, like, dying. It's crazy. It's crazy. Or, like, starts off with them being dead, like with Men Drowned. So, where do we put Mr. Whitemouth? It might be a little biased, but I'm putting it in best of the best. I love Mr. Whitemouth. One of my favorite stories. I love it so much. And also, since it's told from this perspective, since it's from like a 5-year-old's perspective, it might have been like an imaginary friend. Because that could have been. That could have been. We never know. Let's move on to Polybius. In Portland, Oregon, in 1981, an unheard of new arcade game appeared in several suburbs, something of a rarity at the time. This game was called Polybius. The game proved to be incredibly popular, to the point of addiction, and queues formed around the machines, quickly followed by clusters of visits from Men in Black. Rather than the usual marketing data collected by company visitors to arcade machines, they collected some unknown data, allegedly testing responses to these psychoactive machines. The players themselves suffered from a series of unpleasant side effects: amnesia, insomnia, nightmares, night terrors, and in some cases suicide, appearing as having been caused by the game in various versions of the legend. Some players stopped playing video games, while it is reported that one became an gaming activist. Another story of the Polybius is an urban legend about a rare arcade game released in 1981. The game was created by a mysterious company called Sinneslöschen, German for sense deletion, and was a puzzle shoot 'em up somewhat like Tempest. It was only released in a few suburbs of Portland, Oregon. It was supposedly very popular, with people forming long lines to play it. However, players reported strange things about the game, such as hearing a woman crying and seeing grotesque faces out of the corner of their eyes. Players would also have nightmares, experience nausea, headaches, blackouts, or even develop amnesia. Some even committed suicide. Others stopped playing video games altogether, and at least one became an anti-video game activist. According to one owner of an arcade, men wearing black suits would often come to collect records from the game. They did not take any money, simply data on gameplay. Because of this, the leading theory is that it was some sort of government experiment using subliminal messages. The game remains in obscurity as around 1 month after its release, all of the cabinets suddenly disappeared. One cabinet reappeared in arcade in 1998, but quickly disappeared again. While some have tried to recreate the game, no one has ever found the original ROM. Alright, so that was Polybius. I've heard of Polybius before, I never read it though. Polybius! Strange. It's really strange. I think the only thing that kinda makes me feel weird about this game is the simple just fact that there's like men in black suits coming to some random gaming machine. That just seems weird to me. I think that's the only thing where I'm like, nah. Like, that's the only thing that doesn't seem realistic to me. Like, yeah, arrest is possible. Since back in the day, back in the 1970s, where arcade games like started being in the spotlight and somewhat became popular, it wasn't too uncommon for crazy things to happen, like murders over video games and such. Like I've seen so many. I've actually watched a video about like that specifically, and it was crazy. It's like knowing that people kill each other over video games. They still do that to this day, but hell, back in the day it was way crazier. Polybius, where do I put this? I think Polybius goes in meh. It's not better than Lavender Town Syndrome, but it's not worse than like that. But it's not worse than that part. I'm just gonna put it in meh. Okay, next up we have Rap Rat. Ever heard of Nightmare? Like a lot of other games in the 90s, it came with a VHS which you timed with your play. The character on the video would give you instructions on what to do while you played the game in real time. Being a scaredy cat, I refused to play it when my mom bought it for us. My brother was disappointed about not being able to play Nightmare, but my mom had a solution. She brought out Rap Rat. It was a cheap, dingy little catered thing. Dingy little catered thing. Dingy little thing catered to kids my age. I'm starting to think I have some kind of stuff going on with me. I apologize. You went around the board, collected cheese, and the first player to reach the end would win. It seemed simple enough, and since it reminded us of Mousetrap, which we didn't have, there were no objections. We popped the movie into the VHS and set up the board. The first part of the video was just a simple explanation of the rules as well as instructions on how the game worked. Then Rap Rat came onto the TV. He was not what any of us had been expecting. My smaller brother, who was only 3 at the time, immediately left the room crying. The rat did not even resemble a rat. The ears were far too big, it had a mouth lined with 2 teeth, and the inside of the mouth looked like almost swollen. The most striking part about the thing, though, was the eyes. They were large, glassy, and fish-like. I asked, then bothered, then begged my mom to turn it off. Rap Rat suddenly shouted loudly, screaming and wailing, saying, "Wait your turn!" in a demonic, low-pitched voice that was not at all like his normal, obnoxious nasal voice. Okay, let me try doing that. Wait your turn. I don't know how to do that. Oh boy. In the background, we could hear the narrator saying, "He's Rap Rat and he's the boss," over and over again in an overly serious tone. The video was indescribable. Images crossed the screen and quick suggestions. I don't know how to say that word. Overcut Rap Rat's expressionless eyes. The images were some of the things I was afraid of at the time. A person looking over a balcony, a hornet slowly stinging someone's eye, an extreme close-up of a tarantula, a pit full of writhing cobras, and a bloodied syringe filled with green fluid. He immediately turned the video off, and I ran out of the room screaming, slamming my door. It took my mom 20 minutes to convince me that the video was gone, that I would never ever see it again. I had nightmares all week about Rap Rat. This was the last time I saw Rap Rat. While my girlfriend and I were preparing to move in together, I was cleaning out the closet of my room and found Rap Rat again, with the same VHS and the same board game inside. It was almost perfectly intact, save for a thick layer of cobwebs and dust bunnies on top of it. This was strange. Did my mother get rid of it? And what was the game doing in my room? I let out a bit of a gasp when I found it. My girlfriend came to the room asking what was the matter. Breathing harshly, I said, "Rap Rat." She laughed a bit, asking if it was a joke. I shook my head, explaining that it wasn't. She didn't believe me, nobody did, and I decided that the only way to prove it to her was to show her the video. Borrowed my neighbor's VHS as it played the video for her. However, the images had changed. I saw a clown, its nose bursting, and spraying blood onto the screen. I saw a woman alone in a dark room. I saw a man being forced to pick up a white-hot metal and hold it in his outstretched hand, turning his hand to a leathery mess. The scratching I heard as a kid continued, picking up louder and louder. Then Rap Rat showed up and began twisting and convulsing, its arms thrusting this way and that. The costume wasn't a costume anymore. The felt was real fur. Its face wasn't plastic, but instead a bristle of thorns with teeth. The eyes turned inwards and suddenly popped out again. Rap Rat's huge fish eyes were inside out, staring right at me, watching my every move, my every expression. It grinned widely and gestured at my girlfriend and I with a single outstretched human hand. I could hear the faintest scratching at my front door. The TV went blank and showed static. The scratching got louder. It wasn't scratching anymore, but thumping. The thumping of tiny feet on wood. My girlfriend embraced me in fear, and my senses kicked in. Before anything else could happen, I stopped the video, ejected it, and unplugged the VHS. The scratching stopped. When I looked out the living room window, nothing was there. Police showed up soon after, warning us that a neighbor had seen a figure outside of our door and had called in concern. My girlfriend and I simply couldn't explain what had happened and had to tell the police officer it was us. Serious that a children's game was terrifying me. I went to pick up the tape, but the VHS burned my hand. I felt like I had touched a Bunsen burner on the highest setting. We had to get the oven mitts from the kitchen in order to take it out, and even then it was scorching hot. I brought it outside, tossed it down the sidewalk, and crushed it with my winter boots. My girlfriend and I had nightmares every night. We would both wake up in the middle of the night and describe eerily similar images that we saw in our sleep. The scratching would always be there at night when lights were off and the room was pitch black, save for the moonlight coming in through the window. Now, though, the scratching would happen every time I went near the front door, and every time we said Rap Rat's name. It sounded as if something very small was dragging something across the ground outside of the door, pacing, waiting. Oh man. Ugh. I would simply wait with the covers pulled up to my neck until I succumbed to exhaustion. At this point, I was determined to sue the company for damages. First thing I did was call my mother and ask where she got Rap Rat. She had no idea. I found a merchant who sold versions of Rap Rat and asked how I get in touch with the company. He sent me this email. I don't know about the game. but I know it was created by the same people who created Nightmare. The company is called A Couple of Cowboys. Try them. I did a bit more research and discovered that the company became defunct in 1994, only 2 years after the company created Rap Rat. I discovered why they did so soon after. How Rap Rat came to be. In 1992, the year of the game's development, A Couple of Cowboys had commissioned a manufacturing company in Haiti. I don't know how to say that country. I'm gonna say Haiti. To create the doll portrayed in the game. The company who created the puppet ran sweatshop, where they forced women and children to produce the various components of the puppet, including the felt and plastic of the doll. One day, a young Haitian girl got her arm caught in the industrial sewing machine. The spring loader, unable to handle the weight on the machine, came loose and struck the girl's neck, killing her instantly. A few days after the funeral, the mother of the child came to the factory, demanding to see the owner, who denied that he had anything to do with it. In a fit of rage, the mother said that the blood from the innocent would seep into every crevice of the doll, every component with which it was created, and all who touched it would die. She claimed to have summoned a fear demon and screamed at the top of lungs, "Apparat will curse you!" The owner simply laughed and told his corporate bosses about Apparat. They spread the joke from person to person, and the game was renamed Rap Rat, a loose anagram of Apparat. Each recitation of the name Apparat brought with it a greater and greater curse. Only 2 years after Rap Rat was created, the company was shut down and the owners hired by Mattel. There were stories of the workers begging for days off, skipping work for weeks and weeks, finding the puppet in strange places. Sooner were the stories of suicides, grim, violent suicides in which the workers would stab their hands and burn themselves to death, writing "I am fear" on the nearest surface in blood. Nobody knows where the Rap Rat doll went after the original creators disappeared. Some say the last things the victims saw before going insane were large sunken fish-like eyes. Words of warning. 1. Never ever say Apparat out loud. Saying a demon's name out loud is an invitation to them, a calling. If you have already done this, it cannot be undone. 2. Do not try to speak to or contact Apparat. 3. Avoid being awake between 3:30 a.m. and 4 a.m. when Rap Rat is the most likely to try to scare you. The audio. The VHS is back. I thought I stomped on it. I smashed it into Kingdom Come, but it's back. I found it in my sock drawer yesterday. This time I was ready. A whole bunch of people have been contacting me trying to get the tape or some sort of video from the board game. My answer to you is that it's just too dangerous. If I did that, it could very well drive you insane, scare you to death. The video and the game, Rap Rat itself has some sort of strange power. Rap Rat follows me everywhere I go. I see little shadows in the corner or hear sounds coming down the hallway when I'm the only one home. If Rap Rat is there, it will let you know, but it will never let you see it until it's too late, of course. A lot of people have been watching the normal video from the normal board game. That's the thing. Rap Rat can be normal. It will trick you to thinking it's just a puppet and then stalk you day and night. This has made me look around because I said Apparat. Oh boy. So, this story was created by Canadian Cowboy. And I did not know back in the day that this was actually a real game until I watched a YouTube video which had the real Rap Rat. Like someone managed to find the game. What would I say with this story? Where would I put it? It's not horrible, like it's not utter trash. And is it good? Is it bad? I can't tell at this point. I don't even know. At this point, I don't even know. Like at this point, I don't know. This one, I'll just say it's not that good. It's not horrid, but not like that good. Okay, Rugrats theory. The Rugrats really were a figment of Angelica's demonic and unimaginable imagination. Chucky died in 1986 along with his mother. That's why Chaz is a nervous wreck all the time. Tommy was born in 1988, but he was stillborn. That's why Stu is constantly in the basement making toys for the son who never had a chance to live. The DeVilles had an abortion in 1990. Angelica couldn't figure whether it would be a boy or a girl, thus creating the twins. As for all grown up, the teenage Angelica became addicted to various narcotics, which further aggravated her schizophrenia, bringing her back to her childhood and thus the creations she obsessed over. Because of the time lapse between the present and the last time she interacted with her creations, she made them older. Angelica was constantly taking hits of acid, so she would never have to live without her creations who were her only company. In a judgmental word, Angelica's mom actually died of a heroin overdose in 1902, just after Angelica was born, and Drew and his Prussian married a gold-digging whore that Angelica idolized because she fooled herself into thinking it was her real mom, but always had a concept of her mom, Cynthia, and took a Barbie doll and made it after her mom's image, wearing an unwashed orange dress and having jacked up hair, which is why she was so attached to it. Later in life, she followed in her mom's footsteps with drugs and everything, dying of an overdose at age 15 when All Grown Up was cancelled. The only Rugrat not to be fictional ever was unborn Tommy's brother, Dill. However, Angelica didn't know the difference between Dill and her creations, although Dill didn't follow her commands. After endless crying and refusal to disappear like the others did when Angelica was angry with them, she hit him. Due to this, he sustained a brain hemorrhage, which resulted in a deformation. As he grew up, his damage only became more evident, and by the time he was 9 and all grown up, he lived as an outcast, being ridiculed for his weirdness and retardation. The immense guilt over this is what led Angelica to her drug use and what led Angelica to uncreate the Rugrats briefly until her experience of hallucinogenics. On a trip to Paris to find love, Chaz married a woman named Kira, who was actually going to marry a different woman named Coco, but she just wanted him for his money, who had a daughter named Kimi that was torn from her because she was a cocaine addict. Angelica imagined her from Kira's story. He lost his mind after the death of his wife and was in denial that she was ever a prostitute. Upon return to America, Chaz and Kira married and she got her green card. It was actually a really happy romantic story. Kira continually struggled with addiction but was relatively happy with her life on Chaz. Susie was actually Angelica's only friend who entertained the thought of Angelica's creations for her sake. Angelica spent the last days of her life in the back of the school's cafeteria, imagining friends all around her and playing with the lives of her creation. Oh boy. This one, Rugrats theory. I'm not biased, but I hate that I read this. Why? This story is way too crazy. Like, to me, there's so much stuff in there that just makes it out of garbage. Like, actually makes it out of garbage. I can't even explain it. I can't. I'm just blown away. Right? Let's get to one that is not as bad when it comes to the usage of words. One that I was weirdly obsessed with as a kid, that being Squidward's suicide. I just want to start off by saying, if you want an answer at the end, prepare to be disappointed. There just isn't one. I was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios for a year in 2005 for my degree in animation. It wasn't paid, of course. Most internships aren't, but it did have some perks beyond education. To adults, it might not seem like a big one, but most kids at the time would go crazy over it. Now, since I worked directly with the editors and animators, I got to view the new episodes days before they aired. I'll get right to it without giving too many unnecessary details. They had very recently made the SpongeBob movie, and the entire staff was somewhat sapped of creativity, so it took them longer to start up the season. but the delay lasted longer for more upsetting reasons. There was a problem with the series 4 premiere that set everyone and everything back for several months. Me and two other interns were in the editing room, along with the lead animators and sound editors for the final cut. We received the copy that was supposed to be Fear of a Krabby Patty and gathered around the screen to watch. Now, given that it isn't final yet animators often put up a mock title card, sort of inside joke for us, with phony, oftentimes lewd titles such as How Sex Doesn't Work instead of Rock by Bivolve, when SpongeBob and Patrick adopt a sea scallop. Nothing particularly funny, but work-related chuckles. So when we saw the title Squidward's Suicide, we didn't think it more than a morbid joke. One of the entrants did a small throat laugh at it. The happy-go-lucky music plays as is normal. The story began with Squidward practicing the clarinet, hitting a few sour notes like normal. We hear SpongeBob laughing outside, and Squidward stops, yelling at him to keep it down as he has a concert that night and needs to practice. SpongeBob says okay and goes to Sandy with Patrick. The bubbles splash as screen comes up, and we see the ending of Squidward's concert. This is when things begin to seem off. While playing, a few frames repeat themselves, but the sound doesn't. At this point, when sound is synced up with animation, so yes, that's not common. But when he stops playing, the sound finishes as if the skip never happened. There is slight murmuring in the crowd before they begin to boo him. Not normal cartoon booing that is common in the show, but you could very clearly hear malice in it. Squidward's in full frame and looks visibly afraid. The shot goes to the crowd with SpongeBob in center frame, and he too is booing, very much unlike him. That isn't the oddest thing though. What is odd is everyone had hyper-realistic eyes, very detailed. Clearly not shots of real people's eyes, but something a bit more real than CGI. The pupils were red. Some of us looked at each other, obviously confused, but since we weren't the writers, we didn't question its appeal to children yet. The shot goes to Squidward sitting on the edge of his bed, looking very forlorn. The view out of this porthole window is of a night sky, so it isn't very long after the concert. The unsettling part is, at this point, there is no sound, literally no sound. Not even the feedback from the speakers in the room. It's as if the speakers were turned off, though their status showed them working perfectly. He just sat there blinking in his silence for about 30 seconds. He then started to sob softly. He put his hands, tentacles, over his eyes and cried quietly for a full minute more, all while a sound in the background very slowly growing from nothing to barely audible. It sounded like a slight breeze through a forest. The screen slowly begins to zoom in on his face. By slow, I mean it's only noticeable if you look at shots 10 seconds apart side by side. The sobbing gets louder, more full of hurt and anger. The screen then twitches a bit, as if it twists in on itself. For a split second, then back to normal. The wind through the trees sound gets slowly louder and more severe, as if a storm is brewing somewhere. The eerie part is the sound, and Squidward's sobbing sounded real, as if the sound wasn't coming from the speakers, but as if the speakers were holes and the sound was coming through from the other side. As good as sound as the studio likes to have, they don't purchase the equipment to be that good to produce sound of that quality. Below the sound of the wind and sobbing, very faint, something sounded like laughing. It came at odd intervals and never lasted more than a second, so you had a hard time pinning it. We watched the show twice, so pardon me if this things sound too specific, but I've had time to think about it. After 30 seconds of this, the screen blurred and twitched violently, and something flashed over the screen as if a single frame was replaced. The lead animation editor paused and rewound frame by frame. What we saw was horrible. It was a still photo of a dead child. It couldn't have been more than 6. The face was mangled and bloodied. One eye dangling over his upturned face popped. He was naked down to his underwear, his stomach rudely cut open and his entrails laying beside him. He was laying on some pavement that was probably a road. The most upsetting part was that there was a shadow of the photographer. There was no crime tape, no evidence tags or markers, and the angle was completely off for a shot designed to be evidence. It would seem the photographer, oh my god, was the person responsible for the child's death. We were of course mortified, but pressed on, hoping that it was just a sick joke. The screen flipped back to Squidward, still sobbing, louder than before, and half body and frame. There was now what appeared to be blood running down his face from his eyes. The blood was also done in a hyper-realistic style, looking as if you touched it, you'd get blood on your fingers. The wind sounded now as if it were that of a gale blowing through the forest. There were even snapping sounds of branches, laughing, a deep baritone, lasting at longer intervals and coming more frequently. After about 20 seconds, the screen again twisted and showed a single frame photo. The editor was reluctant to go back. We all were, but he knew he had to. This time the photo was that of what appeared to be a little girl, no older than the first child. She was laying on her stomach, her bare wrists in a pool of blood next to her. Her left eye was too popped out and popped, naked except for underpants. Her entrails were out on top of her above another crude cut along her back. Again, the body was on the street and the photographer's shadow was visible, very similar in size, shape to the first. I had to choke back vomit, and one intern, the only female in the room, ran out. The show resumed. About 5 seconds after this second photo played, Squidward went silent, as did all sound, like it was when the scene started. He put his tentacles down, and his eyes were now down in hyperrealism, like the others were in the beginning of this episode. They were bleeding, bloodshot, and pulsating. He just stared at the screen as if watching the viewer. After about 10 seconds, he started sobbing, this time not covering his eyes. The sound was piercing and loud, and the most fear-inducing of all his sobbing was mixed with screams. Tears and blood were dripping down his face at a heavy rate. The wind sound came back, so did the deep voice laughing, and this time the still photo lasted for a good 5 frames. The animator was able to stop it on the 4th and backed it up. This time the photo was of a boy about the same age, but this time the scene was different. The entrails were just being pulled out from a stomach wound by a large hand, and the right eye popped and dangling, blood trickling down it. Made it receded. It was hard to believe, but the next one was different, but we couldn't tell what. He went on to next same thing. He went back to the first and played them quicker, and I lost it. Vomited on the floor, and the animating and sound editor was gasping at the screen. The 5 frames were not as if they were 5 different photos. They were played out as if they were frames from a video. We saw the hand slowly lift out the guts. We saw the kid's eyes focus on it. We even saw 2 frames, the kid beginning to blink. The lead sound editor told us to stop. He had to call in the creator to see this. Mr. Hillenberg arrived within about 15 minutes. He was confused as to why he was called down there, so the editor just continued the episode. Once the few frames were shown, all screaming, all sound again stopped. Squidward was just staring at the viewer, full frame of the face, for about 3 seconds. The shot quickly panned out, and that deep voice said, "Do it." And we see in Squidward's hands a shotgun. He immediately puts the gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger. Realistic blood and brain matter splatters the wall behind him in his bed, and he flies back with the force. The last 5 seconds of this episode show his body on the bed on his side, one eye dangling on what's left of his head above the floor, or staring blankly at it, and the episode ends. Mr. Ellenberg was obviously angry at this. He demanded to know what the heck was going on. Most people had left the room at this point, so it was just a handful of us to watch it again. Viewing the episode twice only served to imprint the entirety of it in my mind and cause me horrible nightmares. I'm sorry I stayed. The only theory we could think of was the file was edited by someone in the chain from the drawing studio to here. The CTO was called in to analyze when it happened. The analysis of the file did show it was edited over by new material. However, the timestamp of it was mere 24 seconds before we began viewing it. All equipment involved was examined for foreign software and hardware as well as glitches, as if timestamp may have glitched and showed the wrong time, but everything checked out fine. We don't know what happened, and to this day nobody does. There was an investigation due to the nature of the photos, but nothing came of it. No child scene was identified and no clues were gathered from the data involved, nor physical clues in the photos. I never believed in unexplained phenomena before, but now that something happened and can't prove anything about it beyond anecdotal evidence, I think twice about things. Okay, so this was I did not know Squidward Suicide was posted by an anonymous user. I think many stories are, which is strange. Now, what do I think of Squidward Suicide? I was weirdly obsessed with this pasta back in the day when I was a kid. Watched a lot of different takes on it. So, yeah, I think it could be a SpongeBob episode if we remove the gore. I think the gore is the main part that I would remove. And the hyperrealism. Oh boy. I remember Squidward Suicide was one of the few episodes that was actually acknowledged by the creators. But I think it was removed at some point because it disturbed a lot of kids. I think The Grieving was another one that was it wasn't shown in imagery like Squidward Suicide was, but I think it was mentioned as a title, shown as a title card. Honestly, I would just put it in meh alongside Polybius. It's not good, but it doesn't not hurt, not total dog shit. I just don't find it to be total dog shit. Like that part. For me, that part is way worse than Squidward Suicide. Suicide, apparently, is a big theme because Vigsaw seems to have picked out the majority of them to be the suicide ones. Because next up is Suicide Mouse. So, do any of you remember those Mickey Mouse cartoons from the 1930s? The ones that were just put out on DVD a few years ago? Well, I hear there is one that was unreleased to even the most avid classic Disney fans. According to sources, it's nothing special. It's just a continuous loop, like Flintstones, of Mickey walking past 6 buildings that goes on for 2 or 3 minutes before fading out. Unlike the cutesy tunes put in though, the song on this cartoon was not a song at all, just a constant banging on a piano for a minute and a half before going to white noise for the remainder of the film. It wasn't a jolly old Mickey we've come to love either. Mickey wasn't dancing, not even smiling, just kind of walking as if you or I were walking, with a normal facial expression, but for some reason his head tilted side to side as he kept this dismal look. Up until a year or two ago, everyone believed that after it cut to black, and that was it. Believed that after it cut to black, that was it. I don't know why there's an and. When Leonard Maltin was reviewing the cartoon to be put in the complete series, he decided it was too junk to be on the DVD, but wanted to have a digital copy due to the fact that it was a creation of Walt. When he had a digitalized version up on his computer to look at the file, he noticed something. The cartoon was actually 9 minutes and 4 seconds long. This was what my source emailed to me in full. He is a personal assistant of one of the higher executives at Disney and acquaintance of Mr. Moulton himself. After cut to black, it stayed like that until the 6th minute, before going back into Mickey walking. The sound was different this time. It was a murmur. It wasn't a language, but more like a gurgled's cry. As the noise got more indistinguishable and loud over the next minute, the picture began to get weird. The sidewalk started to go in directions that seemed impossible based on the physics of Mickey's walking, and the dismal face of the mouse was slowly curling into a smirk. On the 7th minute, the murmur turned into a blood-curdling scream, the kind of scream painful to hear, and the picture was getting more obscure. Colors were happening that shouldn't have been possible at the time. Mickey's face began to fall apart. His eyes rolled on the top of his chin like it was like two marbles in a fishbowl, and his curled smile was pointing upward on the left side of his face. The building became rubble floating in midair, and the sidewalk was still impossibly navigating in warped directions, a few seeming inconceivable with what we, as humans, know about direction. Mr. Moulton got disturbed and left the room, sending an employee to finish the video and take notes of everything happening up until the last second, and the afterward immediately store the disc of the cartoon into the vault. This distorted screaming lasted until 8 minutes and a few seconds in, and it abruptly cuts to the Mickey Mouse face as the credits of the end of every video with that sound with what sounded like a broken music box playing in the background. This happened for about 30 seconds, and whatever was in the remaining 30 seconds, I haven't been able to get a sliver of information about. From a security guard working under me who was making rounds outside of the room, I was told that after the last train, the employee stumbled out of the room with a pale white skin and said, "Real suffering is not known," 7 times before repeatedly taking the guard's pistol and offing himself on the spot. The thing I could get out of Leonard Moulton was that the last train was a piece of Russian text that roughly said, "The sights of hell bring its viewers back in." As far as I know, no one else has seen it, but there have been dozens of attempts at getting the file on rapid share by employees inside the studios, all of whom have been promptly terminated of their jobs. Whether it got online or not is up for debate, but if rumors serve me right, it's only its own line somewhere under suicidemouse.avi. If you ever find a copy of the film, I want you to never view it and to contact me by phone immediately, regardless of the time. When a Disney death is covered up as well as this, it means that this has to be something huge. Get back at me, TR. I've yet to find a copy of this, but it is out there. I know it. Okay, Suicide Mouse. Now, Suicide Mouse, it is interesting. It's just like Squidward Suicide is a classic. It kind of took over the internet, just like Squidward Suicide. But the thing is, Suicide Mouse got a lot of like Friday Night Funkin' mods. I noticed that. Like, it became really popular in Friday Night Funkin' community. I don't know why, but it's crazy. So yeah, that was Suicide Mouse. Let's see, where do we put this? Is it better or worse than Squidward Suicide? No, I'd say it's better. It doesn't have any distinct gore. It has facial mutilation, but that's just like it's not gory in the slightest. It's kind of just facial mutilation without the gore. So I would say it's the same tier as Squidward Suicide. They're kind of just both in the same tier. Oh no, here we go. The Creepypasta I despise the most. I'm not sure if I'm gonna read this. Because, honestly, the story, I remember the story. It was just, no. I can't get myself to write the story. I don't know why Vigsaw included this one because I can't actually read this one. It fucks me up so much. It's intensely gory as people are literally ripping out their skin, they're ripping off their skin, they're eating each other. I remember I had to bleep so much stuff when I read the German version to my mom. Because there's a German version of this. Besides, Gateway of the Mind is kinda like Russian Sleep Experiment, just not as gory. I'll have to read the entire thing, good lord. This is a long one. Mamma mia, this is a long one. Okay, let's try reading this. I'm gonna read it until I get uncomfortable. Until I get uncomfortable. Let's see. Russian Sleep Experiment. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentration. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so they had only microphones. They only had microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. Good lord. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on, but no bedding, running water, and toilets, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners, deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised falsely that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days, oh my god. Their conversation and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past, and the general tone of their conversations took on a darker aspect after the 4-day mark. There was a bug. Lord. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering to the microphones in one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades, the other subjects in captivity with them. At first, the researchers suspected this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. Continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about his behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or rather didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives starts to scream. The 2 non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them constantly over the glass holes. The screaming promptly stopped, so did the whispering to the microphones. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working, since they found it impossible that no sound could be coming with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. Oh my goodness, I hate when Creepypasta use difficult words. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response, and the captives they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphone. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor or you'll be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their response, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice response, We no longer want to be freed. Debate broke out among the researchers, and the military forces found funding the research. Unable to provoke any more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened, and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state that any of them in life. The food rations past day 5 had not been so much as touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects' thighs and chest stuffed into the drain of the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from bodies. Destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hands, not with teeth, as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. Oh, mamma mia, we're doing self-harm now. Oh, the abdominal organs below the ribcage of all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm. What? Diaphragm. What? I don't know. Remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the ribcage. Why? All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fainting out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Oh, man. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber, and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped. Oh my god. Honestly, this is some shit I'd see in Urban Spook. I'm for realsies. I'm starting to think that Urban Slug looked at the Russian sleep experiment and was like, I'm using that shit for my series, because what is this? What is this? Oh, God. And an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives if you count ones that committed suicide enough weeks following the incident. I don't want to read this. I hate this story. I actually hate this. Why? The fact that it's about an artist sharing his art on the internet. I can't read this no more. This is the first story where I'm like, this is too much. This is the first. We're not even half done. And I already don't want to read this. Oh, man. I don't know why people like this story so much. I don't know. This... I'm not continuing reading the Russian sleep experiment. That is breaking me. This is worse than the Squidward suicide gore. Way worse. I don't want to read it no more. No, you can't make me. I'm not torturing myself no more. After the testicle part, I don't want to read it. It reminds me too much of episode 3, bro. Nah. Oh no. Yeah, please. Okay, where do I put this? Now, most people will probably fry me in the comments, but I don't give a flying fuck. I am not reading that story more and more. I'm disgusted, beyond disgusted. I can handle suicide. I can handle hyperistic blood. I am not dealing with someone ripping off their skin. I'm not dealing with cannibalism. That's where I draw the line. I'm not dealing with cannibalism. I am not dealing with fucking ripping out testicles. I'm not dealing with that. No. Fuck no. Ow. Oh, I swear to God, I'm slapping Vigsaw once I'm done with reading the last 5. I'm ripping Vigsaw to shreds. No. Why do people like the story? Utter trash. Like, it's not horribly written. Just fuck it. I'm gonna put it not too that good. Okay, good. I'm in between trash and not that good. I'm just gonna put it not that good. Otherwise, people are gonna fry me. What is this? It's just gore. It's just gore. For me, the Russian tape experiment is just gore. It scared the shit out of me as a kid. And it disgusts me still to this day. It still does. I don't wanna. Oh boy. Ugh. I hope the next story is gonna be better. The Seed Eater through the trees. I wish she would have stayed home, away from this cruel world that we live in. Dear reader, children shouldn't roam this world alone, but we can't keep them in their nest forever. My son left his room one night to the enchanted chirping outside his window, and I knew what this was, but only from my years of studying this creature. You see, there is a monster that wanders around the globe preying on innocent children, watching, waiting. I remember fondly it was September 15th, 1983. That was the year my wife and I escaped the busy world of New York to live lives in the country, North Dakota. We lived happily there for several years until I discovered my one true love, studying the Seed Eater. The Seed Eater is a disturbed bird-human creature that roams the forest, stalking children, abducting them to be part of the legend. Oh god. Apologies. I'm kind of recovering from the last story. On June 19th, 1987, I first saw it sitting in my tree on my front lawn. I was in a daze when I saw it. My destiny beckoned to me. It said, follow it, love it, learn it. Around the same time, 2 weeks later, I awoke to a strange tapping noise on my front window. I knew it was him. I ran out of the house to see it sitting in the tree, just staring into my eyes. I was about to cry from the majesty of it. But I was about to cry from the majesty of it. I remember it telling me that it wanted my help. I would do anything for it. On April 3rd, 1988, the Seed Eater arrived at my window again. I was overjoyed. It said it was time, and I remember. You see, the Seed Eater devours children to keep itself alive, indulging in their youth to live forever. I remember the little boy. Oh, what was his name? Oh well, it doesn't matter. I remember going to his house and just simply knocking on the door at 4:29 a.m., but nobody would answer. I saw the bay window. It was the boy's room. I went to tell the Seed Eater, let's just call him SE for now. He told me how to get his attention the next day. A couple of weeks went by, and the stench of the flesh was getting disgusting. Where was SE? Parents of the boy put up posters last week. I wonder why they didn't worry for the first 2 weeks. Oh well, I'm not concerned. On May 14th, 1988, the boy was nothing but bloated, rotting flesh, and the SE was nowhere to be found. I guess my services weren't needed. May 15th of 88, he came. He took the body and requested another. May 16th, 88, 6 kids killed, 6 kids devoured, 6 more were requested. May 18th of 88, however losing people makes me wonder. And it's in bold letters which spells out help me. The killer monster Seed Eater came tonight. He said kids weren't doing the trick anymore, wanted something bigger. If you're reading this, you may be the only hope finding out the truth of this thing. In my room, there's a journal on page 49. You'll discover how to take the life out of this monster, but he's had me under a tight death grip. I couldn't do it, but maybe you'll have more strength than me. Goodbye, everybody. I hope being eaten is what I brought onto myself. This was made by Orphi6666. So this story is quite unique, as a lot of the text is like crossed out or is in bold, and I really like that about the story. I don't think many people actually know about the theater. I don't think many people do. I remember seeing a lot of art with him in Eyeless Jack, but I don't think people know him. But if I had to say, I would actually say it's well written. I really like the story. It's nothing too good. It's not too grotesque. It's not hyper realistic. It's not like all that. It's kind of just pretty nice. It's a pretty nice story, but it does not top Mr. White Mouth Mechanicals by a mile. I haven't found a story like that. Can't be like that at all yet. Alright, last 4. Next up, we have the statue. A few years ago, a mother and father decided they needed a break, so they wanted to head out for a night on the town. They called their most trusted babysitter. When the babysitter arrived, the 2 children were already fast asleep in bed. So the babysitter just got to sit around and make sure everything was okay with the children. Later that night, the babysitter got bored and went to watch TV. But you couldn't watch it downstairs because they did not have cable downstairs. The parents didn't want children watching too much garbage. So she called them and asked them if she could watch cable in the parents' room. Of course, the parents said it was okay, but the babysitter had one final request. She asked if she could cover up the angel statue outside the bedroom window with a blanket or cloth. The phone line was silent for a moment, and the father who was talking to the babysitter at the time said, "Take the children and get out of the house. We'll call the police. We don't own an angel statue." Police found both of the children, and the babysitter slumped in pools of their own blood. Within 3 minutes of the call, no statue was found. Okay. This is a short story, but it's a really effective one, I think. And one that, many people probably remember. Now, this story, the angel statue, is kind of reminding me of Gabriel from Medalla Catalog, because he's based on an angel statue. I remember that. I remember that he's based on an angel statue of the actual Archangel Gabriel. So this could be Gabriel. Could be Gabriel in disguise. That wouldn't be surprising. Now, this story, it's short and sweet. I wouldn't say it's the best of the best, but I think it's well written. It's a really nice story. Really nice story. It's short and sweet, but it's effective. Next up, we have The Theater. Have you ever heard of an old PC game called The Theater? Yeah, I didn't think so. Probably because many people say it doesn't even exist. You see, The Theater is an old computer game released around the same time as Doom. Today, if you ever find it, it's only available on crappy bootleg CD-ROMs, which more often than not don't even actually contain the game. Weird sentencing here, but okay. The actual legitimate copies that they say were released back in the day feature a blank cover with nothing but the sprite of what has since been named the Ticketmaster. Well, not the Ticketmaster, the Ticket Taker. There we go. He's simply a poorly drawn, pixelated Caucasian bald man with large red lips, wearing a red vest over white shirt and black pants. He's completely emotionless, though some say that if you smash the disc, his face is shown as angry the next time you look at the cover, but this is just dismissed as an urban myth. What is peculiar about The Theater, though, is that there's no developer named on the jewel case nor a game description on the back. It is simply the Ticket Taker on a white backdrop on both sides. The game was initially known for its inability to install correctly. The installation process immediately locks up the computer. when the user reaches the licensing agreement. Also strange about the licensing agreement for the theater is that whenever the development studio is supposed to be named, the text is simply a blank line. Anyways, most people who have claimed to own one of the original CDs say that they figured out how to install the game by simply rebooting the computer on the licensing agreement with the disc still inside. Then they are prompted to press I agree on startup. Then they continue with the installation. The game that starts up without any introduction, besides a main menu that is simply the sprite of a movie theater's exterior on an empty city street. The title fades in, and then the 3-minute main menu buttons, new game load options. Selecting options immediately crashes the game to the desktop. Load is not to function at all. Even if you do have a saved game, nothing happens when you press it. Thus, new game is the only working menu option. Okay, I have to get down here a bit. Once it's elected, you are in a first-person view. You are standing in an empty movie theater lobby with the exception of the ticket taker, standing in front of a dark hallway which one can only assume leads to the theaters themselves. There's nothing to do but look at the poorly drawn, mostly illegible movie posters or approach the ticket taker. Once the player moves towards the ticket taker, a very low quality sound clip lays saying thank you, please enjoy the movie, along with a speech box saying the same thing. You then walk into the hallway and the screen fades to black and you're back in the empty lobby, and you do this exact thing again and again and again. While this may sound like a really horrible game, a number of peculiar things occur as continue to play. The number of times that you have to continue into the hallway after giving you your ticket to the ticket taker before the strange events happen is unknown. Most state that it's completely random and could take anywhere from the first playthrough to the 400th. What happens though has deeply disturbed some players. The first occurrence is when the player fades back and after walking into the hallway. This time they will notice the ticket taker is completely absent. The player then, without any other option, decides to walk into the dark hallway. The sound clip and text box mentioned previously still play in the absence of the ticket taker, but when the player walks into the hallways, the screen does not fade out. It goes pitch black as they walk deeper into the hallway, or into the hall. But the player's footsteps sound clip is still playing as they continue to push the up button on their keyboard. Those claiming to have played the original game report to have felt extremely uncomfortable walking down the hallway, anticipating the whole way something horrible happening. While eventually the player is unable to move forward, there is nothing for a few minutes before a strange sprite that is described as the ticket taker but with a swirl for a face appears and stands for the player. The original players of the game say their bodies immediately froze up and their stomachs churned. They saw his sprite when they saw his sprite. There's no when, which has been appropriately named the swirly head man. Nothing happens as the swirly head man stands before them. Apologies, good lord. Then suddenly a piercing screech plays as the game glitches. This lasts for a few minutes with the screeching being continuous. Then the player is abruptly returned to the lobby with all the sounds and graphics being as they should be. How long is this? Okay, what about the end? The game continues normally for the next couple of cycles of entering the hallway, with a couple of the original players claiming the swirly head man briefly appear and disappear in the corner of the screen as a brisk yelp sound effect plays. Then at some point after the meeting the swirly head man, the player sees the ticket taker pacing back and forth. Though there is no walking animation, the sprite limbs are really static, so he just hops up and down slightly as a substitute, with his eyes being wide and his mouth open to simulate a worried facial expression. Some players noted that the movie posters had been replaced with images of the swirly head man, which caused them to immediately turn their character's head away from the posters and approach the ticket taker. Then another different low-quality sound clip plays, but the speech box contains nothing but corrupted characters that cause whatever text in it that would have been in the box to be completely legible. Due to the extremely low quality of the sound, it is debated by players that exactly the ticket taker says at this point, though it is widely agreed that he says never reach the other levels. Then the screen fades but once again and returns the interact to their starting point in the lobby, but the ticket taker is gone and the hallway is blocked by a large brick wall sprite. Touching the brick wall will immediately crash the game, and that's all there is to it. No one knows what the other levels are or how to gain access to them, nor is it known why the swirly head man causes such huge fear in those who have seen him in the game. All the original copies of the theater have either been lost or destroyed, but the creepiest part is the fact that all the original players of the game claim to occasionally see a brief glimpse of the swirly head man out of the corner of their eyes. Okay, so there's a sweet sequel to this. To this creepypasta. Not gonna deal with that. This story is just nothing. It's nothing interesting. It's kind of just meh. I'm gonna put it in meh. It's alright. It's alright. It's nothing too major. I know it's a classic, but it's just It's alright. It doesn't scare me really well. It doesn't scare me really that much. Good lord. So I had to put I didn't even know it's an accident and put you in trash on the other trash. I already wondered why that team was weird. Okay, last two stories. We have white with red. A man went to a hotel, walked up to the front desk to check in. The woman at the desk gave him his key and told him that on the way to his room there was a door with no number that was locked and no one was allowed in there. Especially no one should look inside the room under any circumstances. So he followed the instructions of the woman at the front desk, going straight to his room and going to bed. Next night, his curiosity would not leave him alone about the room with no number on the door. He walked down the hall to the door and tried the handle. Sure enough, it was locked. He bent down and looked through the keyhole, to the white keyhole. Cold air passed through it, chilling his eye. What he saw was a hotel room like his, and in a corner was a woman whose skin was completely white. She was leaning her head against the wall, facing away from the door. He stared in confusion for a while, almost knocked on the door out of curiosity, but decided not to. This disinclination saved his life. He crept away from the door and walked back to his room. The next day, he returned to the door and looked to the white keyhole. This time, all he saw was red. He couldn't make anything out besides a distinct red color unmoving. Perhaps the inhabitants of the room knew he was spying the night before and had blocked the keyhole with something red. At this point, he decided to consult the woman at the front desk for more information. She sighed and said, "Did you look for the keyhole?" The man told her that he had, and she said, "Well, I might as well tell you a story. A long time ago, a man murdered his wife in that room, and a ghost haunts it. But these people were not ordinary. They were white all over, except for their eyes, which were red." Okay, that was it. It's a sweet and short story. Nothing too special, kind of like the theater, but well, do I put this in meh too, like the theater? Or do I put it in well written? Nah. Well written is meh. What's going in meh? It's not worse than anything of the not that good. Lastly, oh my god, whose phone? Okay, so basically it's like this. You are at a friend's house for like the night or whatever, and then you guys are making out on the couch. Yeah. And then like her dad calls on the phone and says, "No, she likes it more. No, she likes it more if you use the other hand." Yeah. And you're like, "Oh, dude, your dad is trying to give me advice on how to diddle you." And then she's like, "I don't have a dad." Or whatever. But whose phone? Also, so you're with your honey and you're making out when the phone rings. You answer it and the voice is like, "What are you doing for my daughter?" And you tell your girl, and she says, "My dad is dead." Then whose phone? This creepypasta is so ass. Oh god, I think this is a joke pasta. This has gotta be a joke pasta. The grammar is actual ass, bro. Like, I'm not even joking. This is the worst grammar I've seen in my life, bro. Like, this has gotta be a joke. It's gotta be a joke. It's gotta be a joke pasta. There ain't no way. It's gotta be a joke pasta. It's gotta be. But since it's a joke and it's not supposed to be taken seriously, I'm not gonna put it in trash. I think I'm just gonna put it in. Where do I put it? It's comical. It's comical. It's a really comical one. I like this one. It's really comical. I think I made a reading of this like long time ago. I didn't publish it. I just made it by myself. I would not put it in the best of the best. I think it's not well written either. There's so many grammar mistakes. It's crazy. Oh God. If we talk about scary, then it's probably just trash. And if we're talking about just its general existence, I might seem a bit crazy for doing this, but we're putting it in well written, as it is supposed to be a joke, at least. It seems to be a joke. I mean, hell, the amount of times they said yeah, or the amount of unnecessary words that are in there, it's crazy. So that was it. That's my ranking of them all. Of all of them. I'm kind of confused right now, because I've read so much, my brain is kind of just... It's not working anymore. So yeah. We're going right to Vigsaw.
Thank you, Amy. I'm gonna be dead after this. I know, I'm gonna be so dead. Oh, robbing Amy of her good old sanity, as I usually do. But Amy was just reading creepypastas that randomly found. No Jeff the Killer, no Thunderman, no Sonic Galaxy, like none of it. We're just going to straight random creepypastas. It took me a while to make that tier list, as I had to decide which ones Amy should read. And Amy didn't even read like Russian Sleep Experiment. She was like, nah, bitch, I ain't doing this shit. Just sick and tired of my ass. Sick and tired of my ass. Bruh. You see what's like? I see sick and tired of my ass. Bro's been staring at me for the last 5 hours. Huh? Okay, it didn't take Amy like 5 hours to record. Like, I mean, he's been staring at me from over there. Zach, you better not kill me in my sleep like you did with Tommy. Not in the best of the moods. That's kind of normal. Because I'm gonna die. Because my butt's gonna die, which means Amy's gonna die. Because Amy's gonna kill us both. Fantastic. Fantastical. Oh. Ugh. Oh man, and then me has to, like, the host me. And then me has to edit it all. Has to edit everything. Bless her heart, bruh. Bless me's heart, bruh. Holy moly. She's gonna have a hell of editing that shit. But, yeah. That was all I had to say. I have to go now, as Amy's about to kill my ass. But, yeah. See you around. Bye-bye.